morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Pure Digital Passion Podcast with me, Moses Kemibaro. In this episode, I'm sharing a recording of a powerful and timely panel discussion I participated in at the Syntura CXO Breakfast held at the Capital Club in Nairobi on March 27, 2025. The theme was AI, cybersecurity, and the future of the digital workplace. And I was joined by some amazing minds, being Brenda Mbathi, CEO of the Two Rivers International Finance and Innovation Center, also known as TRIFIC, and also Frank Molla, the Managing Director for Africa at MDP. The session was brilliantly moderated by Andrew Barden, CEO of the Kenyan Wallstreet. Now, a quick heads up. The audio you're about to hear kicks off in the middle of a session. I only realized midway that the event's AV system wasn't recording, so I captured this using my phone. The audio isn't studio grade, but the insights are pure gold. You'll hear candid thoughts on AI integration, cybersecurity best practices, digital workplace tools, and the evolving role of humans in the technology-driven world. So plug in, enjoy this very real, very relevant conversation.
Let's make us more efficient so that we have more time on our hands to do other things. So I think the efficiency gains and the ROI need to be explained, I think, more implicitly to organizations, and also how we're going to see revenue growth, and also, of course, have customer satisfaction. So these are the things that I think that all of us grapple with on a day-to-day basis, because we haven't yet found AI specialists. And are we all going to become specialists? Is this something we need to hire into our organizations? And I think I'd be very curious to hear how best we integrate AI, because a lot of us are using it. I'll put my hand up, accidentally. We're teaching ourselves. And there must be so many better ways to learn how to do it. Does that answer you, Ben?
Yes. And, I think you hit on a great point of, one of the biggest gaps that's existing is actually just awareness of what's possible, as opposed to just, hey, give me a content calendar for this. There's a lot more advanced things that can take place.
Can I just interrupt you there? Because there's one word I wrote down, and if I don't say it, then I might have to read that. And age catches up with us when we forget. Agentic AI? Agentic AI. So I'm definitely not yet at agentic AI. I'm just exploring. So again, how do we get to that? And I like the way that Fred's laughing at me, because he probably is just a high-tech guy. He's going to tell us more.
Well, yeah, Frank, I want to come over to you next. One, because Brenda prompted me, but also because MDP does a lot of fintech work, from card issuance, card processing, payment APIs, and such. Correct me if I'm wrong. But, when it comes to finance, especially doing finance digitally, given that finance is the most regulated industry in the world, there is a lot of precautions you have to take. For your team, I'm sure your tech stack for cybersecurity is quite robust, I think would be the word. And so I'm curious from hearing from you, talking about AI and such, what is the value of also having a very firm and solidified cybersecurity process to, not only advance your business, but also, to make sure that, getting back to the trust issue that Tony mentioned earlier, that you're not destroying your trust overnight?
Thank you. So just to explain, in case you see young, it's not a growing panels, it's not a growing audience. I'm fasting. And every time I'm looking at the water, I feel like drinking it all great here. But when Tony was here, he asked how many people attended the AI tour for Microsoft. So, myself and I saw a guy, Joe. That's the first time I had one compilers. All right? It was the first time. And it's amazing when, I downloaded the app and then, I'll go and I'll say, good morning, Copilot.
Good morning, shaping up.
It's shaping up okay. How are you today?
In tip-top shape. ready to tackle whatever you throw my way. What's on your mind today?
Well, I'm attending a Syntura event and I don't know anything about Syntura. Do you mind sharing a few tips?
Absolutely, Frank. Syntura, with its digital transformation focus, specializes in modern workplace tools, cloud adoption, cybersecurity, and IT resilience. They're all about empowering businesses through technology. Anything specific you'd like to know about their services?
No, not really. I'm at the panelist, so we'll talk later. Thank you. So that's Copilot, right? So I got to know about during the AI tour, and pretty much you can ask it anything, can personalize it, any conversation that you want to have. So I really got excited. And thanks to you for that. So you asked about cybersecurity, and there's something I do every Friday of my week, which is called Tech for Non-Tech Leaders Friday, because what I realized is every time you travel and you talk to executives, they want tech simplified, because there's a lot of jargons that we use around technology. One of the things I will say is none of us have monopoly of information or mastery when it comes to leadership. So with that mindset, even in the crowd that we have here, we have close to maybe over 500 years of experience in different areas. So we keep on learning every other day. Now, when Chris was feeling Chris fine, you talked about people, and I counted, you almost called the white people like 6, 7 times. When Tony came on stage, I had people, I had collaboration, I had partnerships. Pretty much, this is the direction that everything is centered around people. So MVP, based out of Egypt, been there for over 30 years now. I've been in card manufacturing. The debit cards that you have in your pocket, credit cards, we do that in partner with your respective banks. The security part of that starts in the manufacturing, in the factory. That card has around 5 layers. There's a top side, which is a PVC that peels sometimes, depending on how you use it. But the security element of that card starts in the factory before it gets to the banks. By the time it gets to the banks and they decide to personalize it and you come to pick it, the education around fraud, cybersecurity, that's where it really needs to start. So that's one of the things that we do. The second one is in processing, in digital analytics, and skill tracking. But when I was sitting there, I listened to the speakers and I had to change the narrative because I needed to contextualize the conversation this morning. So one of the things I wanted to ask you guys is the three largest world economies from a GDP perspective. Which is the top largest economy in the world by GDP? Anyone? US, correct. Number two? Sorry. Number three?
Japan or Germany?
Russia. Number three, cybersecurity. So the world's third largest economy has bad intention. So US is around over $27 trillion. China is around over $70 trillion. And cybersecurity as of 2024 stands at over $9 million trillion. And the third largest economy has really very bad intentions for all of us, right? And this is what we need to capture. Now, cybersecurity is not set it and then you're done. You don't come in and say, we've done what we need to do, we've set it, we are going to go and you forget it. So it's a continuous conversation. For us in LDP, what we came and learn is sometimes people innovate for the sake of, you just innovate because it's innovation. If you go to Nigeria, they don't innovate for the sake of innovation. Nigerians innovate for the sake of trust. Nigerians want, if I'm sending you my money, I'm sending you your money, I need to receive it now. That's why instant payment in Nigeria happened many years ago. Some people innovate because it's sexy and all that. But the question you need to ask yourself is, as you think about all these trends that are coming, why do you innovate? Sometimes the best technology is not what you need now. What does your consumer really want? So even when it comes to innovation, and that's how we tend to approach it. I'm going to give you another scenario. And I need you to carry this with yourselves. Where there is money, there will always be fraud. Where there's money, there will always be fraud. So regardless what you do, that has to be always in your mind. Where there's money, there's always fraud. We always talk about KYC as banks, but I want to change that narrative this morning. Let's talk about KY. KYC is know your customer. KYE, you need to start knowing your enemy. So you open your bank accounts with one bank, you move geographies to a different country or a different bank. You then come back to you and say you really need to update your details instead of this information. No. For us as MDP, we are very heavy, not on the technology part, but on the information part in terms of what do you need to do. I'll give you an example. When it's raining, that's not the best time to fix your roof. And most people in the room, when you're being hit by fraud, is when you start rushing to get some of the fraud tools on look for the people like Syntura to help. What you need to realize is when the sun is high out, that's the best time for you to fix a leaking roof, not when it's raining. CEOs have competing priorities, and that's why sometimes it becomes challenging for you to accept the fact that we need to consider, we need to try and plan, and we need to try to see how do we fix and how do we play all these things. Now, still under cybersecurity, when you attend such events, fraud has a face, by the way. And every time you attend an event, guys, please don't attend. The fraud does always attend. Just confirm your neighbor. Fraud has a face. It's not faceless. And the reason why cybersecurity remains the third largest economy from a GDP perspective of a 9 trillion is because they also attend such seminars. They hear what are the good tools you're talking about, and they keep on staying ahead. And I like the beauty of what Tony and team did. They sent to us personalized invitation. You have to register, so they know who's coming in. Most of the sessions that you attend where you're asked to pay for, they also pay for them. For you as an organizer, you think, wow, I'm full house, I've made some cash. They are also there. They're thinking of how to take that cash away from you. All right. So always be aware some of these trends that come and the things that you need to do. The other things that we always talk about when it comes to cybersecurity is think of banks in any country. We don't share information. Can you imagine if there was one center where if bank A was hit and the information is being shared somewhere centrally so that the next bank can avoid that? But what we do today, some when they're hit, they'll keep quiet because CPK will be on your case. They don't want you to know. So the same person will easily go and hit the next time. So can you imagine a time where you have a common center, every information that is happening, you put it there so the other people can learn from the lessons that you learn. But again, we are not just there for a number of reasons. But these are just some of the educational things that we keep on sharing with different, companies, partners, and all that. So for me, our takeaway as MVP, we understand the tech part, guys, is the easier part. Technology is about trust. Anything you build is around trust. But people is what you try to focus. The last example I'll give you to simplify it is how do you onboard? Today, it's a CV out there, we want to hire X person, they apply to the job, they give you the CV. You call the referees that they put there and then you say, hey, we confirm. You know, you know what's happening? The CV that you have, Tony is my friend. Hey, Tony, I'm going to enter the 5%. Guess they call you. Just say this. In fact, even some of you write those recommendations for us and we just sign. And they're sent. You're not aware that you just onboarded a browser or somebody who's coming. So even from an onboarding perspective, the conversations we keep on having with partners is when you onboard, please don't ask for CVs that are not for referees. At one tier, what do you do? Build independence, reference, reach out to Barclays HR. we are calling this person, reach out, then you get accurate information because for cybersecurity, most of the time, it's in-house. It starts from A before it goes out. So we try to simplify the conversation so that it really sticks on. Because technology is everywhere. You'll never learn technology. But without this education and informing the consumer, this starts growing economy outside of security.
Thank you so much. Now, back over to Moses. You know, you were telling me earlier you use a lot of AI in your business, in your life, to help make you more efficient. And Brenda had asked earlier, how can I make my work more efficient with AI? So I was curious, can we get some advice from you on some of the maybe tools, processes, and such that you are using AI within your business, within your life to make you more efficient as a business leader?
Okay, thank you, Andrew. So I'm literally almost an AI savant, meaning that everything and anything I do nowadays has some form of AI. Let's start with the phones. Yeah, I'm using the latest. This is the S25. I have the other one as well. They have AI, right? I can make a phone call to somebody in France. I don't speak a word of French, and we could have a conversation because it can do real-time translation. When I go into meetings, it's almost automatic that I start recording the meeting, of course, with consent, because we live in the era of data protection. And I record the conversation that we have. And on this device is the ability to transcribe that meeting without me even going online. And by the time I walk out of the door, my client, whoever I met, can have the notes from our meeting, including a summary. That's how I use AI. When I attend forum like this, as I normally would, I would record what is happening here right now. And then I would go to a software called Otter. Do any of you guys know Otter? Maybe you see it arrive in your meetings when you're having a Zoom call or a Google Meet or a Microsoft Teams meeting. But also you can use it to literally just transcribe anything that is audible. And more importantly, you can then take that, upload it to Otter, and then download the transcription and take it to ChatGPT. What does that mean? You can then do a summary or an analysis of that conversation. And guess what? You can even turn it into a blog post or a description for a YouTube video, whatever you need it for. There's also another really wonderful AI tool, which I was also demonstrating the other day, called Notebook LM. I don't know if you've heard of Notebook LM. It's a Google product. You can upload anything, including a website, and then it gives you the information or the insight from what you've shared in the form of a podcast. So literally, it's a podcast conversation around maybe a report, a white paper, anything you've uploaded, so that on your drive to work, it's unpacking in the form of a podcast, this particular insight that you want to achieve. But ultimately, I think, Andrew, it's all this idea that for pretty much anything and everything that you might want to do, today there's some form of AI. In fact, another one that's brilliant is called Gamma. Maybe you've heard of Gamma app. So what it does allows you to create essentially PowerPoint presentations with a prompt. So you can say, create a PowerPoint presentation that I'm presenting at the Syntura event this morning regarding AI, cybersecurity, blah, blah, blah. And guess what happens? You can get a 10 to 15 page PowerPoint slides, which actually will be quite credible and well presented with graphics and all the data that you might need. In fact, the person who introduced me to Gamma told me that there was an instance where he had a friend of his who had a personal emergency, called him at the 11th hour and said, I need you to cover for me at this event. He got into a car on an Uber. He created a presentation in 10 minutes, went and presented and got a standing ovation. Yeah, and that's the power of AI. It's the ability to do sometimes the impossible. Like I was telling you about the participant in the workshop I ran last week who has now moved from 5 hours to 5 minutes. But I have a framework or an acronym that I like to use when I think about AI, and I call it FESPEC. And FESPEC for me is like the several things that I think AI does for you at work and also in your personal life. And probably the first one is basically the need to do things faster. Yeah, what used to take you a day or two potentially could become a task that is much faster in the way that you do it. The other thing is that it makes you more efficient, which is the E in this, much more efficient in the way that you do things. It also makes you more effective. It simplifies your work. It makes you appear smarter sometimes. Last night I was working on a post-training report. I'd never done it before. In fact, quite often I have to remind myself that what I'm trying to do potentially could be done using an AI. or using a prompt using an AI. And normally I would write this report in something like an hour, maybe 2 hours. And I just put in a hypothetical, I uploaded what I had done, broke it down some notes, and in 5 minutes I had my training report. So again, something that took me an hour was suddenly a 5 minute activity. But probably the biggest takeaway that I would say that comes out of using AI is, like all things out there, I honestly don't think anyone has the absolute playbook yet. People are still dabbling, they're still learning it, almost the way we started doing social media something like 20 years ago. There was no real method until much later. And I think the secret to this process is going to be, you must become a practitioner and you must start to experiment. Like I always like to tell people, don't just leave it for the kids with the dreadlocks and tattoos. Okay? They're sharp, they're smart, what we call the Gen Zs. But even some of us, the Gen X, the ones who are told by our daughters that Facebook is for old people, should explore the possibility of learning some of these tools in our own time, going to Google, researching, watching those YouTube videos. I don't know if you're all aware that just this week was a massive announcement by Stripe Masiwa of Ecotel, who are going to be building AI factories across Africa, including right here in Kenya. And they're deploying billions of dollars to do this. So meaning that soon we're going to actually have this infrastructure sitting within our markets. But ultimately, what I would say is that the way to use AI is almost to look at everything that you do and ask yourself the simple question: could AI do what I'm trying to do right now? And could it potentially save me money, make me faster, easier, potentially even smarter in terms of what I could do that was previously not possible when I did not have AI?
Okay, interesting. I know my father called me the other day, and he was the kind of man who swore he would never own a computer. And he called me the other day. I was like, "Hey, have you heard of this Chat GPT thing? Like, this is pretty cool." Um, and so now my father, who swore he would never own a computer, is now absolutely loving, how the technology is making his life easier. So I think what you're right is, this shouldn't just be a Gen Z thing. This should be, all generations, because everyone can use it, and it's not as complicated as, people make it seem to be. But I'd like to pop over to Brenda again, because Brenda, at TRIFIC, you host a lot of BPO businesses, business process outsourcing organizations. With that, these BPO organizations are essentially providing services to foreign companies here locally in Kenya, whether that be call centers and other things. I'm curious, in your experience in speaking with BPO operators, how are they leveraging AI, cybersecurity, digital workplace to become more effective uh, here, now that we have these technologies that are actively venturing into the business landscape?
Thank you. I would also add that when we use AI, because it cuts down the amount of time that you previously were doing all this work, work becomes also a little more enjoyable because you have more time. I would hope that. I think it's a have more fun.
The gift of time is always welcome.
Gift of time. Yes. So yes, we host videos at TRIFIC. And one thing about business process outsourcing firms is that they are serving clients who are outside of our jurisdiction, outside of Kenya. And it's also very competitive. So they have to be up to date and at the forefront of how they leverage AI tools. Cybersecurity is also very important, and also all workplace digitization, because they have to be global. Yes. So one thing that's come up is that, oh, well, BPOs are going to be replaced by AI powered chat boxes, but that actually isn't the truth. And that, all we need is virtual assistants. They will, handle everything. But you also need some humans behind those virtual assistants. Of course, they do support when it's not so complex, and they have virtual assistants or bots. And in fact, you see them, let's say, if different banks, they now have virtual assistants who just the mundane tasks. So in case of cancer, they have something called Abby. And PESA also has a chat, that can support you in routine things. But one thing that's interesting is when we go out to attract BPOs, we've been saying, look at our Kenyan talent, look how well they speak English, We're known to be accent neutral. We have great demeanor. This makes us more competitive. And a couple of weeks ago, a client of one of the BPOs, came to see me and was giving me an update on, what's going on in their work. And they said, one thing that brought us here was, the things you said about talent, English speaking. He said, but guess what's just happened? He said, we now have an AI tool where, so we were comparing ourselves, and I say this with a lot of respect. Let's say you were comparing ourselves to an Indian BPO, and we'd say that they have accent in terms of how they're answering the customer. When we talk to somebody in the States, perhaps they're having difficulty in understanding. They say, now we have an AI tool that can amend their voice. So if they're calling from Texas, the AI tool comes on top of their voice and actually responds to you as if you're there in Texas. And so you don't even know where this person is. So you still need the human to able to give the advice, but there is an AI interface. So they said this is really revolutionary because it's going to allow them, and because of the algorithm, so they can tell where the person is calling in from, and then it just gives you that voice. So your voice can end up sounding like anywhere in the world. And then as you also indicated, you could then change it into a different language, etc., etc. And they said that this was really, really important. And that's how I think AI is coming in. But enhanced cybersecurity is really, really important for BPO players. The increased cyber threats that we see, they carry a lot of data, so we need more AI-driven security tools so that they really want to see that. And as you said, the way we go to work to do our work, the fraudsters go to work every day to do their work. So I think AI is there. It's helping to support anything that's very repetitive, easy to do. Yes, you're going to have an AI tool, point to point. It will be a bot. But the humans are still needed, but also how to enhance their work, make them more efficient. Because in a BPO, it's also about how many customers you can talk to per minute. Literally, you're seeing those analytics and making sure. So we are looking to do that as Kenya because we truly believe we have the opportunity and the platforms to offer this to BPOs, to offer them high quality talent, but high quality care. Because just being in this room and saying that, there's Syntura here, Brenda is here, Moses, everybody can add to this ecosystem, and they like that. These are global players coming. Yes, it's more cost effective, but also they do enjoy that we have a great ecosystem. And that's all partners in this room today. So
It's the people inspired solutions. You can't just have a call center of AI agents. There has to be people. I know with my bank back in the US, I hear the AI and I've figured out that if I'm extremely profane, it'll give me a human being to talk to.
so is that the solution? Be profane. That's the prompt engineering.
Yeah. Now, Frank, I went on LinkedIn because I wanted to see, how big MDP is, and you were in a lot of continents and a lot of countries. So I'm actually curious on the last part of our topic today, the future of the digital workplace. How is MDP leveraging technology to make sure that your team in Peru can communicate with your team in Cairo, with you here in Nairobi, and so forth? I'm curious, how has that been, and what does that look like within the organization?
All right, thanks, Anthony. So if I come to that, when Moses was speaking, Brenda, some kids are into the mind. I want to throw something to the audience before I answer that question. So you guys know that 51% of people use the same passwords for multiple accounts. Don't be shy. How many of you use your year, but the year when you're born as a password? Come on, guys. It's a 4 digits number. And you know what you guys do? If you're born in 1980, you do 8019.
Yeah.
You flip it.
Oh, so is that count?
It's a list because they reuse the same passwords. You start with your passport, month, date of birth, and then you connect the year. It was born on 13th May 1968. So you take 13 and then you put the last one. You keep on changing it around. Then what do? That's your phone. You go to your computer, you make some names, and the last one you use there. You go to online where you connect. So what you guys do, you just keep on using the same passwords over and over again, but you just keep on changing them. I know you won't say, but I'm seeing the smiles on the face. And I can tell that's what you guys. That's also one of the reasons why we are feeding the third largest economy. Because nowadays they don't tell you to take a flash disk and put it in a laptop or in an office somewhere. They are stealing your data online. So think about how you use your passwords. Most of you have saved your passwords on your phones. Today, if somebody asks you like, "This phone, your password," if that one is hacked, you're done. So these are the truths. Now I'm seeing that this is slowly sinking down, and you'll change that later. Um, Again, there's something Moses said. Moses, you said, let's not leave it for the kids with dreads and tattoo.
Yeah, basically my employees, that's how they look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said the intelligence. So I'll have to keep dreads and when I come. And then, Andrew, there's something said about your dad using ChatGPT. I want to contextualize as well. My dad is somewhere in the remote area, he's around 78 years. We are struggling to bring him up to just use WhatsApp. Andrew's dad is already on ChatGPT. You see how context is important in conversations. Anything you do, context is very important. We talk about AI. Now the conversation is going to ethical AI, right? I saw something where what Moses was speaking to. AI can even speak my native language in terms of translation. And I got worried. What does that mean to my dad who's still struggling using WhatsApp? They can call him, convert the language which he understands, and the guys feel like he wants password. And then there is something. So there's also ethical AI. What are we going to do about that? As we then always have to contextualize the conversation. So let's move to, the work. I'll tell you. Once upon a time, we were using the fixed lines. If you guys remember, dialing like that. For those of you who your parents used to lock them, they still go and hack. We had hackers from way back.
You're tapping it.
They tap it. They're here with us. So you take the headset, and they like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, and then the phone goes.
Maybe you should say for the Gen Zs in the room that you could buy a padlocked case for your phone. So your parents would put a padlock so you could not actually dial.
Right? So that's where we came from. And then to where we are today. As MVP, what you're saying is what is easy for us? Let's not make it complex. Right? What is working for us? Because innovation is just innovation and it keeps moving. So we came into phone calls. If you remember, I can call you, we can communicate. But then cross-code again is very expensive. WhatsApp came. I was in an organization where WhatsApp was the main way we communicate, and it was working for them. Came into MVP, COVID happened, then you have Teams, you have Zoom, you have Google Meet, you have. So what we've done and is we've given it where what is okay for you to use in the market where you are internally. What is that model and what is that channel that you find easy? We tried regulating and saying we are going to use Teams, but we realized there are banks that don't want to use Teams, they want to use Zoom. So again, we keep on adjusting. So we have a model where we've left it open, what is working, but knowing that things are evolving, we must adapt. It's the one skill that, if you don't carry it, you're going to be left behind. We are aware of things like 365 Copilot, where you get into a team call and it does the notes for you. The moment the call ends like this, it has sent the action plans, who said what, who's supposed to do what, and the next steps. So we have all that range, but what we say is, what is it that works for you? So that when we're talking to our customers at the end of the day, we contextualize that conversation. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Now, I don't have any more questions for the panelists, and these guys charge a lot of money to consult. So I've gotten them for you for free for just a few minutes if you have a question. We'll have a mic that's being walked around. Does anyone have a question? Let's start with the gentleman in the...
Do we have a rooming mic? I can donate mine.
there's one coming. Okay. Here. Thank you. So go through things.
Thanks a lot and good morning, everyone. Yesterday we were on data privacy conference, which I dived into online. And for the 2 days, AI was part of the discussion and never went down until the last day when the mics had to be put down. So yesterday, an interesting question came about, and it was, I think I'll take it to fun. As you said, during some of these conferences, or such areas, to bring our people up to speed, there's the need to make them more aware about these tools. So being the different organizations that we sit in, we have upskilling. Now, by upskilling, different individuals have to understand the tools so that they understand the control stuff better. How do you balance in between upskilling for them to use the tool rightly and limit the chances of them using their knowledge against the organization? How do you kind of get to that particular balance? Thanks.
Did you get that?
We should. We cannot ask more in detail than we ask answer. How do you want to do it? To respond to that? Or?
Yeah, we can just respond to that. Do you need me to summarize?
No, it's saying, how do you balance? I just want to rephrase it. So we have different in the state of upskilling guys in the organization. I think you're talking about misuse. We're talking about, overuse or something like that. And I'm sure most guys will also be in a position to speak to this because it's dealing with most of. So, like I said, nobody has monopoly of knowledge, right? And what I've seen personally experience is there are deterrents and there are controls. And there's frequent training, consistent frequent training. Whatever the strategy of an organization is, most of the time we see the conversation starts from here, it dies somewhere at the mid-level, then the guys who are down here are somehow lost. They really don't know what really happens. So different metrics. One, how is that strategy? If you're saying we are adopting AI, we are starting all this data-driven conversation. How do we make sure that it's being adopted and calculated from top all the way to the person down there? How many people in the organization are heavily using data on a day-to-day or even AI, and which kind of, colleagues are not so much involved in data? It has to be contextualized in each and every organization so that you even know whoever has the most access. Is there a backhand and a checker kind of way on all this stuff what is happening? Because regardless, you might try to do training internally, but if your onboarding was wrong, even if you train the best person, you might be training the best person, but you think they're being upskilled so that they do not really get to abuse that. So there's a whole channel on how to look at it. HR has a responsibility on how they onboard. HR has a responsibility on employee engagement. HR has a responsibility on training, frequent trainings. Line manager have a responsibility of valuation and tracking. But then separate from that, what the organization does is things like machine learning behind the scenes. How do you not just do this machine learning for your customers alone to protect the customers? How can you also do it internally? Because your employees are also some your clients. How can you also try to manage that? So from a technology perspective, we tend to build for external, but we can also build for internal. I've seen some banks even bringing in what is this thing called where the line detectors or something like that. When products happen, and you ask, when you part of it? No, okay, sit here. Put your fingers. No, you're part of it. So it depends on how you contextualize it. It varies by organization based on your strategy, but also I'd like to hear what's the first to say.
Um, I think going back to what you said previously, I mean, it's just sort of, essentially social engineering. The fact that a lot of fraud and a lot of instances of cyber threats quite often are internally initiated in some form or other. And you find that the bad actors, as you said, are with us. It's not that they're somewhere out there. Yeah. They're within the confines or the spaces that we all operate in. And one of the things I always think about is also the fact that AI, as it were, um, has the ability to do things like predictive analytics and also pattern recognition, right? Which means that within certain scenarios, if it starts to understand how certain things should work and there's a deviation from that or an exception that is understood, then the software itself can actually initiate a trigger saying, we're seeing something here that potentially suggests that there is either the intention or the possibility of some kind of fraudulent behavior. And I think going forward, that's one of the things that AI really shines at, where as much as I might trust the next guy, I believe that he's ethical and he's doing the right things and they've worked with us for 10 years, there's always that possibility. That very fact of familiarity, in fact, opens the door even wider for instances of fraud. And I think technology allows us to sort of close the loop around some of those risk areas by the fact that it can start to identify and detect things that could be a threat to our organization. So those would be my remarks on that.
Thank you, guys. I got time for one more question. Did someone? Uh,
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Joe, and first of all, I think we so appreciate the very insightful discussions from the panel speakers. My question is, we're talking about people in the workplace and things like that. So I think it's natural for us to think about impact on people and jobs. I think one of the reasons why some business leaders might be having concerns about AI, they really want to have on some tasks. And it's not anything that I've not been spoken about. There are real statistics that show that some jobs will actually get replaced, right? Quote, I believe Mustafa Suleiman, the AI CEO at Microsoft, he said that AI in the next few years will have a hugely stabilizing impact on the workforce as we know it. And when you think about it, that's quite profound, but also a bit scary, right? In the sense that, actually giving a statistic about acceleration from 1% in 2024 to what that 3% in about 4 years. I don't think we've seen anything in the scale of that kind of speed of growth from the PC to social media to, I don't know, many, mobile. That is a huge speed of change. So maybe my question to you is, as you speak about, the workplace and the efficiency and all these great things, how business leaders address the concern as more of a social concern on what some of these changes will mean to the people who do jobs right now. When suddenly we are having AI teachers, AI doctors, AI instructors, some of the things that we already see now, but in the next 4 years will largely have changed the landscape of the workplace as we know it. Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to tackle that first?
I can give a one liner. So there's something I came across the other day. In the age of AI, some companies will be lagging behind not because they're not adapting, but the action of the business is not changing. Right? Everything around us is changing except attitude. Technology is evolving, the human psychology is remaining the same. This is where I'm seeing this. If you remember the secretarial days, you moved from typewriters the ones who changed the attitude and adapt really started using laptops. And it keeps on evolving even today where many CEOs will no longer need their assistants to book their calendars. AI or Microsoft Copilot 365 can do that for them. And then, how are you changing your attitude towards technology to remain current? Now, this is more a personal conversation separate to what the organization needs to do. How many of you invest on your personal education line or do you wait for your organization to fund it for you? You need to keep track, you need to keep current so that you and AI, you are all collaborating and you're not competing. And that way, it keeps you as an individual up to date and more relevant as technology evolves. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda.
Just supposed to take from the example we saw of holding this car, and it was the demon because what are we going to do? People who are producing the horseshoes, etc., etc. Life evolves, and you evolve with it. AI is actually making life better. When you talk about even in the medical space, there are queues and queues of people waiting to see doctors. There's some very, very minor ailments. If there's a simpler way to get a diagnosis of some sort through AI and not have to queue for 3 hours to see the doctor, or get your results, be able to interpret them, go to hospital. I think this is all about enhancing our lives. And I don't think it's competing. I actually think that AI is here, as Frank said, our attitude. If we embrace it and use it in the right way, so yes, there's ethical AI, etc. I think there's just so much more it can do to make it sufficient. And actually, I don't think it will take away from us. I think there'll be more and more things that we need to do and we can do more efficiently than how we're doing things.
Moses, do you have anything
Yeah,
on that?
lots. Good. The first thing I want to say is a kind of like a phrase I came up with, which is don't give a human a robot's job. Okay? Because the robot's job is boring, it's mundane, it's time consuming, it is not sexy. Right? But give a human the job or the work that actually intellectually engages them and allows them to amplify their core strengths and abilities. So when I look at AI, that's what I see in front of me. Because if you understand the subject matter, if you understand what it is, then why are you spending 4 hours writing reports when it should take 5 minutes? Your core competence is not writing reports. Your core competence is doing the work. Same as the meetings. Like before, I remember in my own company, at the end of these virtual meetings, before we started using the note takers, one of our poor colleagues would have to sit down at some point, try and unpack what we discussed in the meeting, unpack the action points, and then send the notes after a couple of hours. Now, within 5 minutes of our meeting ending, we have our action points, we have our meeting discussion points, etc., etc. So what has happened there? The robot has taken the work of the human, right? It's much easier, it's much faster, it's much better. So going back to I think what Frank said, I think the attitude is the biggest problem. That's the thing I meant when I said people underestimate the impact. There's this nostalgia about things are going to be business as usual in the next 2 5 years because AI is looked upon with disdain because it's making people less effective or less efficient. The same way that during the pandemic we felt that productivity was so some people seeing somebody sitting in an office versus measuring their output in terms of what they're achieving on a daily basis. Yeah, we need to change our attitude and behavior around what is in essence in our face in terms of the reality of what's happening. Now, going back to some of the trends we've seen historically, if you look at the Industrial Revolution, at the time also when people were working on farms, I think over 80% of the global economy were involved in the agriculture of the planet. When the tractors came out, everyone was like, what the hell? What's going to happen to all these jobs? And I think we kind of managed that. Didn't we? We now have tractors all over the place. And that is how people then were able to increase productivity. Farms are producing much more and feeding the rest of the world. And I think AI is going to be essentially the same thing, meaning that will jobs be lost? Absolutely. But what kinds of jobs? The jobs that can be automated and made faster, easier, simpler, cheaper, better are the ones that are going to move to the AI workflow. However, where there's intellectual quality, or rather the person can then 10x their productivity because of the technology, suddenly becomes a much better doctor, a much better lawyer, a much better engineer, a much better graphic designer because of the fact that they're using AI. What does that mean in terms of cost? It means that obviously the cost per unit goes down. But ultimately, it means that everybody gets this 10x ability because of AI to be more productive, more engaged, but ultimately even open up new types of jobs that actually make things possible. Now, going back to prompt engineering, if you go to LinkedIn today or some of these job sites like Indeed, there's a role called prompt engineer. It is actually a career. People who have mastered the art and the science of prompting AIs to give you the most accurate, most precise results. Now, case in point, the report I told you about last night, I did just say create a report. I prompted it, create a report in the style, tone, and voice of a senior consultant working at Accenture or McKinsey, contextualizing it to Kenya. I read that thing. I literally was stunned. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. It made me look so smart. It was incredible. But that's the point. AI is even taking us to the point where we're doing work we couldn't do before using technology that is amplifying it. And actually, if you look at what's happening in the world consulting situation today, talk to the PwCs, Accentures and all, you'll find that clients are now telling them, hang on a second, are you still billing me by the hour when you're using AI? They're having to rework their billing models because they know that now AI allows a consultant to do much more, but at a much lower unit cost. So all the practices and the nostalgias we have about the previous ways of doing things need to be mapped to the next practices where the world operates primarily using AI in pretty much every workflow. And that's what my response to you.
Yeah. Well, round of applause, please, for Vanna.
One last,
Of course.
my parting shot on this would be the strength of any ecosystem is measured at the legacy within that ecosystem.
Food for thought. Thank you so much.